Welcome you all to the 42nd annual meeting of IDB Group and to this Innovation Forum. The first thing that we need really to start is with recitation of Holy Quran. Dr. Rahal.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الذين قالوا ربنا الله ثم استقاموا تتنزل عليهم الملائكة ألا تخافوا ولا تحزنوا وأبشروا بالجنة التي كنتم توعدون نحن أولياؤكم في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة ولكم فيها ما تشتهي أنفسكم ولكم فيها ما تدعون نزلا من غفور رحيم ومن أحسن قولا ممن دعا إلى الله وعمل صالحا وقال إنني من المسلمين ولا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم وما يلقاها إلا الذين صبروا وما يلقاها إلا ذو حظ عظيم صدق الله العظيم
الله العظيم. Before we start, just to mention, you have the translation in 3 languages. You have the Arabic, English, and French. Please, on the screen, the translation. So please note of the languages if you would like to hear in Arabic or in English or in French. So you say Bismillah and we start this Innovation Forum. Just to make a little introduction about this forum. As you know, innovation these days is crucial. Most of the countries now adopted national innovation strategies. And part of that, they have what we call innovation centers. And these innovation centers are really the facilitator to connect people, to share experience, and to make sure that the economy grows in the country. Today, we would like to share with you about some experience from different point of view. We have views from government, we have a view from academia, we have a view from NGO, and we have views from the international organization. However, the private sector is missing because we have so many forums on private sectors going on in innovation and for the youth in this annual meeting. Before we start, what we are going to do today, we are, inshallah ta'ala, first of all, we'll have a presentation by each speaker, inshallah ta'ala. This speaker will talk about 5 to 7 minutes about their experience. And then when we finish the speakers, I'll address them with one question, then we'll open the question and answer for the crowd. Let me introduce first the speakers. We have on my right, Sister Fatima Al-Naqwi. She is the Chief Innovation Officer, right? in the Ministry of Finance, UAE. And on my left, I have Datuk Mark Rosario. He is the CEO, AIM, which is Malaysian National Innovation Agency of Malaysia. On my other right, I have Dr. Milika Begovic from UNDP, Turkey. And on my other left, I have Dr. Nabil Koshak. He is the Vice Chairman of Wadi Mecca Valley, and he is the Dean of the Prince Mohammed bin Salman College of Business and Entrepreneurship. And now we need to congratulate him because he becomes of the rector of Baha University. And I have on almost the most right, I have Mr. Alan Peck. He's from OECD. And I have on the list, not the last, not the least, is Professor Professor Ghada Amr. She is the Vice President, Arab Science and Technology Foundation. You can see we have from government, we have from academia, we have from NGO, and we have international organization. Now we will start. The first speaker is Mr. Datuk Mark Rosario. Please.
A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And firstly, thank you to IDB for inviting me here to speak today on innovation. In the 5 to 7 minutes, I'd just like to cover, firstly, starting with some of the challenges that from our point of view in Malaysia in terms of innovation and what the government is setting out to do, and some of the programs that we have to address those issues. Okay, it's no pointer. So, now firstly, well, our definition of innovation is really about doing something different, something new that creates value. And value creation could be in the form of, whether it impacts society or whether it generates new revenue for business. So in terms of the challenges that we faced, first of all, if you look at academia, our universities, there tends to be a mismatch of skill sets between what the universities are providing with the competency that's required by industry. Another area, if you look in green, there's a perception that innovation requires large investments, whereas the reality is that innovation can happen at all levels. It doesn't. Innovation is not just about having a big game changer, having our own version of Google. It really cuts across everything, and even small changes can be considered innovation. And thirdly, if you're talking about industry, the private sector, government, companies, organizations, they tend not to see the return on innovation very clearly. So particularly large corporations, when you talk about innovation, they don't really see how, what sort of investment is going to be required and how to see the returns that they're getting out of that. So I'm going to talk briefly about those issues. From the government's perspective, we need to look at how we can provide the direction and have a vibrant innovation ecosystem in the country. Now, the National Innovation Agency, we're known as Agensi Inovasi Malaysia, was set up in 2011 through an act of parliament that was passed. So we're a government agency, and it sits in the Prime Minister's department. The Prime Minister is the chairman, and there are 7 other ministers that sit in a council that governs our agency. That has about 16 members. So there's representatives from government, 7 ministers, as well as industry and academia. Now, the reason for having so many different ministries represented on the council is because for us, innovation cuts across everything. The Prime Minister himself chairs every meeting, about 3 times a year, since we started in 2011. So we're about 6 years old now. And our overall goal is about how we can create wealth for the country through innovation. And as I mentioned earlier, wealth creation is not just about revenue generation, GNI, jobs. It's also how you can have impact on society. Our approach to innovation is multi-pronged. There's 6 broad areas that we are looking at. And in each one of those, you'll see a little logo, and those are major initiatives that we have. Firstly, in cultivating a thinking culture, how can we prepare our next generation to be able to think creatively and critically? And various programs we have there. In the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about that. The second area is social innovation. We call it innovation for and by society. How can the government and the private sector work together to support what we call the third sector, all the social organizations that are working on the ground? And to this end, we've developed a new social finance framework, how the government can actually take a different approach to how it's funding social initiatives based on outcomes as opposed to funding programs up front. The third area is industry-academia collaboration. How can we facilitate industry to work more closely with academia? And the various programs we have there, one of them is called Steinbeis, which is a platform that links industry directly with subject matter experts. So companies that are trying to develop some new products or innovations, they can come to Steinbeis that links them to a subject matter expert, whether it's a university researcher or from our research institutes or even individual experts, to directly engage them to help them solve those problems. The fourth area is what we call transforming strategic sectors. This is looking at identifying opportunities for innovation to create new wealth for the country, looking at strategic sectors in the economy. An example of that is looking at the biomass that's being generated in the country. Biomass is different forms of agricultural waste, and there's huge potential for us in Malaysia to create new downstream industries in things like biochemicals and bioplastics from the biomass that's being generated, but particularly our palm oil industry. And so we've developed a national biomass strategy that's looking at how we can materialize those opportunities. And the fifth area, innovating organizations, is looking at how we can get the private sector to be thinking more about innovation and what they're doing in that space, and how they can actually develop their own innovation strategies. Again, I have a slide on this after this that I can talk a little bit more detail. And finally, it's catalyzing commercialization. How can we increase the rate of commercialization of the research and intellectual properties that's being generated, both from the public and private sectors, from our universities, our research institutes? How can we see more of that finding its way to the market? The amount of research that's being done and a lot of intellectual properties that's being created is not much use if it just remains in those institutions. It needs to find its way to the market and to be commercialized. So just very briefly, I know I've only got 5 to 7 minutes, so just very briefly, I've got 3 more slides. On cultivating a thinking culture, there are various programs that we have started working with our Ministry of Education. We introduce higher order thinking tools to our school children, things like thinking maps. We've also developed a design thinking school. I'm not sure if you're familiar with design thinking. The school is called Genovasi. It's the 3rd such school in the world after the first one that was established by Stanford University, Stanford Design School, Hasso-Plattner Institute in Germany, and we set up Genovasi in Malaysia about 5 years ago. Design thinking is almost a way to teach innovation. It's how you empathize with your end customer. And so we run design thinking programs for both the civil servants as well as the private sector, targeted at young working adults. The initial program that we introduced was targeted at the age group 20 to 35, where they go back to their organizations and use these design thinking tools. A lot of success stories we can share, but perhaps not in this time, from individuals that have been through those programs. Now, in innovating organizations, as I mentioned, we talked about how can we get our local Malaysian corporates to be thinking more about innovation and what they should be doing in that space, we worked with an organization in the UK called Nesta to develop some new tools. What does it mean to be investing in innovation? To become an innovative company is not just about doing R&D. It's much more than that. And a lot of it is intangible. How do you develop your relations with your customers and suppliers? How do you develop your human capital, your processes? So all these things are what would actually make an innovative company. And so we developed these tools which allows companies to actually develop their own innovation strategy. And we've been running workshops for the last 2 years. We have 700 of the largest Malaysian corporates now actually utilizing these tools because it gives them insights into what areas should they be looking at, how should they be investing in these different areas, for example, in human capital. And these tools also provide them with dashboards to monitor what they're doing in each of these areas. Now, the reason that the companies are keen to use this is because we've been also driving the fact that technology is moving so fast. You've got Industry 4.0 and the convergence of these technologies is going to impact your industry. No matter what industry you're in, there's going to be some disruptive innovation that's going to come along. So we're telling our corporates they need to look at this and focus on how they can develop their own innovation strategy. And in the last area that I talked about, catalyzing commercialization, we have set up a commercialization platform called Platcom, which provides end-to-end facilitation. And this is to help the private sector from going through their journey to commercialization. If you think about that journey from having an idea or having some kind of intellectual property that they may have licensed from an academic institution, it's a long journey to commercialization. And so what Platcom does is provide help all along the way, from doing your proof of concept, your prototype, your pre-commercialization, your business plan. And we started this about 2 years ago. There's about 115 companies that are now on this program, startups or SMEs mainly. And we've seen a lot of successes coming out of this as well. In the space of 2 years, 21 of those 115 companies have already achieved commercialization, and that number continues to grow. So very briefly, that's just giving you an overview of what we're doing in the space of innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mark. Actually, today we have two country pioneers. We have Malaysia, and now we are going to have the UAE. So, Sister Fatima, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Assalam.
So, talking about innovation in the UAE, I know so many might think that it's a brand new topic to the country, but we in the country, we believe it is in the DNA of the people, it is in the DNA of our leadership and how they manage government performance and functions for way back ago, more than those couple of years. But if we go to the presentation, back to my slide on how did this actually get started in the government, it all started with the announcement of His Highness Sheikh Khalifa, President of the United Arab Emirates, to the Year of Innovation as 2015 as the Year of Innovation. What did that exactly mean? And how did that get reflected in the way people functioned and worked, whether we're talking about government, private sector, citizens and public, everyone in the UAE? Will be reflected in my later slide. However, I just want to highlight as well that this is also fitting very nicely and very beautifully to the UAE 2021 vision, where we say we want to be among the most innovative nations in the world. So, the United Arab Emirates announced the National Innovation Strategy in 2014 as a framework for everyone in the government who's working on innovation-related projects. So, the National Innovation Strategy represented a roadmap to the country and how are they supposed to be working when it comes to innovation, what sectors we're focusing on. So, the number of sectors are highlighted in that strategy. We had the pillars that we need to focus on as government agencies across the entire federal government and local emirate governments in terms of enabling the employees and the people, in terms of developing the tools that our colleague from Malaysia referred to, which you have already done and accomplished, which I will also reflect later on. Another one important or major player or driver of innovation in the federal government is the establishment of Mohammed bin Rashid Center for Government Innovation. And I would really ask you kindly to pass by their booth as well in the exhibition to interact more with their people and the team who's present there and demonstrate more on their functions. The center has been playing a major and key role in terms of supporting the efforts of innovation across the federal government since its establishment. We're talking about supporting an innovation related to the core businesses of the entities across the government. We're talking in programs to enable employees and to develop the skills needed for them to lead innovation and to contribute to the innovation efforts of their own entities. And this is exactly where we reflect to the creation of a position that has never existed before in the federal government, which is the position of the Chief Innovation Officers. Now, right now, as we're speaking, we have 45 active Chief Innovation Officers taking the challenge and being the advocates of innovations across the federal government. And I'm proud to be one of the very first graduate of the program that the center has worked on with Cambridge University to graduate public sector innovation experts diploma certificate. And my colleague Shama as well is here, one of the team members, as she's a graduate of that same program as well. And the program is ongoing, enabling more and more of the government employees to understand exactly what does public sector innovation mean, government innovation mean, and how to reflect that knowledge in terms of culture, in terms of projects, in terms of management of innovation activities to their own entities. Another one interesting activity that the government has been focusing on for the last couple of years is the Innovation Week. Basically, it says Innovation Month because this is a recent change that the leadership thought we need to give it more of the attention. So starting from 2018 February, it's no longer Innovation Week, it's Innovation Month. What is Innovation Week to start with? It's a nationwide celebration of innovation across the entire country. We're talking about government and private sector, students, universities, citizens, you name it. Everyone is interacting under the umbrella of innovation. And this is a very important message because it highlights an important fact that innovation is not a solo effort. And we at the UAE, we actually realize that. And we're proud to say that we've done it in a very short period of time, in a couple of years. And maybe this will be also reflected in the demonstration of Ministry of Finance activity during that week, that we realize we're not working alone. We worked as a ministry, for example. We worked with the private sector. We worked with universities to highlight what does innovation mean. We worked close to the people, to the citizens. So it's basically a celebration of all those coming together to put on the purpose clearly in front of everyone, achieving the same objective, contributing to the same pool of activities and functions. What happened during Innovation Week? Usually you will see government entities, private sector, local emirates coming and announcing major innovation projects. For example, speaking from Ministry of Finance, we have announced Mohammed bin Rashid Innovation Fund. It has been announced in 2015, brought to activation. The portal has been receiving application in 2016. It is a government-backed guarantee, a 2 billion fund, 2 billion Arab Emirates Dirham fund. It's in a form of indirect funding where you receive a government-backed guarantee supporting innovators and providing them with affordable financing. Financing is available, but we were looking for affordable. Moreover, it focuses on the innovation aspects of the projects that gets to be financed in comparison to similar SME supporting funds. We're more focusing in our due diligence and our focus on innovation aspect. This is basically where we as Ministry of Finance have that question in our mind when we started thinking what kind of projects we can bring to boost the ecosystem of innovation in the country. So the announcement of Mohammed bin Rashid Innovation Fund came. And I would also advise to please kindly pass by our booth. It's an exhibition as well, so you will know more about the fund and how can you benefit from the fund services as well. I wanted to highlight our very recent activity as a ministry during Innovation Week 2016. This is the evolving understanding where we actually highlighted that we as a ministry plays a bigger role than just simply saying what can we as Ministry of Finance and the field of finance contribute. This is a much bigger responsibility that we had, and I would like to play a video if you don't mind, a very brief one. Promised I won't be late. Sorry if it was too long. So that was from the recent Innovation Week. Thank you. So that was from the recent Innovation Week. It's a very important turning point for everyone working in the government, because by that time, everyone realized that it takes some time for us to be mature in terms of our understanding and our contribution to innovation. And we're at the beginning, yet at a very important turning point, and we have a lot of head to be done. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sister Fatima. Actually, when I see what happened 10 years ago, when we start working with the World Bank about the knowledge economy and about the innovation, they were focusing on 4 areas. They focus on enabling institution and regime, education system, information infrastructure, and innovation system. And now we can see, mashallah, our member country, we can see from Malaysia, from UAE, they are much more advanced now on this framework. They have their own framework, which is really, we are very proud of these, advances in the innovation. Now, I need to give the floor to Dr. Nabil, please.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. I'm gonna tell you a story in a place which is close to our hearts in proximity, actually, which is an hour drive from here, and also it's close to our heart in the Islamic world, which is the city of Mecca. The story of this exercise started actually 7 years ago when I was appointed as the vice rector of Al-Qura University in Mecca. And the dream was actually to push boundaries. How can we transform our students and academics to think beyond teaching and research and to go into innovation and commercialization of innovation? And we started this. This is working? Okay. So what was the dream? The dream was actually to have a hub that foster innovation and entrepreneurship in proximity to the city of Mecca, in proximity to the University of Al-Qura, where it can bridge the gap between academia and industry and the market. And that was the challenge. The brainwave and bandwidth of academics is different than what's happening in the market, in industry. And this transformation is not easy, trust me. I've been jumping between academia and business for the last 15 years, and that connection and transformation is not easy. So the focus in all universities worldwide, mainly on teaching and research, and we thought we need to focus also on the third mission of higher education, where it's important to foster innovation and commercialization of innovation and tech transfer and knowledge transfer. And this is aligned with the micro-level presentation from Malaysia and the UAE, where this is important, the engagement of universities and this pool of talents available with faculty, researchers, and students to foster innovation and entrepreneurship. We didn't start from scratch. What we did actually, we did a tour, virtual and physical, to learn from best practices worldwide. In the US, in Europe, in the Far East, in the Middle East. So we tapped into best practices, and we learned what are the services need to provide within universities' ecosystem to foster innovation and entrepreneurship. And we found out there are many practices, but they are all of them are offering the same services to foster innovation and entrepreneurship. So our vision was there are 3 circles happening within universities. One is the I, which is the innovation. The other one is the research. The third one is the market. And usually, research and innovation is only about publications in highly cited journals or patents that is filed in a patent office in whatever country. And that's it. There is no interaction with the market. So the M circle was not integrated. What we did is actually trying to push boundaries to move from research into market, to move innovation into the market, and to bounce back to update our research activities and programs and innovation activities. And we set the KPIs for us since day one. These KPIs, for instance, number of patents was 0 in 2010, filed, issued, commercialized, tech products, licensed startups, customers, investors, all were zeros in 2010. And we set these KPIs to measure our performance. Are we going to the right direction or not? And many people were telling us, you are dreaming, this is a hopeless case, academia is an island that is far away from the market and industry. So we started a couple of programs. Some of them were successful, and some of them were actually failures. We learned a lot from many failing activities that we did, and we shut down because it's not creating the deal flow of potential startup coming out of research and innovation. So some of them were awareness programs. Some of them was actually being an inventor or an entrepreneur and practicing that, and what are the services need to provide it to support these services. And we established a couple of innovation centers in different areas related to actually the niche market in the city of Mecca, which is like crowd management, transportation, logistics. We are receiving this huge number of people every year. Definitely, this is our niche market, to do research that has a potential to be commercialized. So the dream was actually, can we be a producer of a technology? Do we have the lack of knowledge, the skills, the mindset? No. We can be transformed from users of technology to producers of technology. And we started forming the team, the dream team, to do this transformation. And then we started a facility in a proximity with the campus of the university. It's called the Startup Center, where it's a co-working space that provides 3 main services. One of them is the co-working space, so our faculty and students and people from the market and entrepreneurs from the market actually can join forces and be founders of a startup that commercializes research and innovation. The other program was actually to provide a seed fund and the mentoring and right coaching services within that facility. So this building is an hour from me. I invite all of you actually to visit. It's 1 hour drive from here. This is actually the facility that we have. And we provide these services. The first service, actually, part of this building is actually to have an innovation center. The innovation center provides the services for prototyping and product development, because it's very needed to some of the innovative ideas to be transformed from an idea into a product. And we also have the prototyping center that transforms these prototyping services and also product development services. So this is actually the start of the dream being realized. These products actually has been designed, manufactured in the city of Mecca, and now being implemented in many areas, in the Haram, in the Red Sea Mall in Jeddah, and in Khalid Airport. So that was a dream, to move research into innovation, into a product, into a startup, going into the market. That foster knowledge economy and create jobs, create transformation of innovation into commercialized products and startups. These are some of our startups that we are so proud of these startups, of our inventors, entrepreneurs, academics, and also our students. These are some of our technology products that is developed by these startups. So I'm talking about real experience here, focused on products that is related to the niche market in the city of Mecca. Avera is one of our unicorns that gets investment by an investor from the UAE with 3 million Saudi riyals. NaviBees got an investment from an investor in the eastern region here in Saudi Arabia. Ra'id Ventures. Lucidia is actually an amazing technology where actually it's do the spatial and temporal analysis of tweets. So you know what people are talking about and where. So it gives some analytics on the tweets. Smart Hajj was one of the products launched by the Prince of Mecca, Prince Khalid Al Faisal. BioCubes was in the healthcare industry. So this is a product that is actually automates the process of analysis of the cultures. And these are some of our clients. And the word clients in universities was forbidden, actually. Now we're seeing clients using our technology coming out our research labs and innovations within the university. And that was the transformation. And one of the first actually customers was the Riasat Shu'un Haramain, responsible about managing the facility, Al Holy Mosque in Mecca and Medina. So that actually, it's an application linked with a network of sensors to do indoor navigation within the Holy Mosque. You can imagine there are more than 300 doors in the Holy Mosque. This huge mega infrastructure needs an indoor navigation system. It's not only for the visitors, Hajjis and Mu'tamirin, Muhajjaj, but it's also for the people who are managing and operating this huge facility. And that's also implemented in Matar al-Malik Khalid and King Khalid Airport in Riyadh, and also actually near here, the Red Sea Mall is using the same technology. Smart Hajj that was launched, I talked about this. I'm going to skip some of the slides. So in short, we are trying to access many industries. Healthcare was one of our sectorial focus because also we have capacity. We have about 9 colleges on the healthcare and medical area in Al University. And none of them was doing research to do something to what's needed in the market and the industry. Now that's what we are pushed by boundaries for the academics. I think I'm running out of time, right?
That's fine. That's fine.
That's fine? Okay. This is actually the Red Sea Mall I talked about, some of the activities, events. In short, these are some of the showcasing of some of our technologies that's coming off Al-Qura University in the city of Mecca and now being implemented in the market. Another important project was actually to do the modeling of the crowds in Tawaf and Haram to support decision-making in crowd management for this mega activities and events happening in the city of Mecca. That was implemented when the one universities, the tracking of pilgrim movement actually and logistics and transportation, and that was very important during actually in Masha'ir area in Mecca, Arafat, Muzdalifah, to make sure that the transportation of pilgrims and will actually being implemented on time. The last things actually that we were happy about. So the first thing was actually to transform a research outcome or actually an innovative idea or a patent into a product. And then from a product you go into a startup. And then that startup actually goes to the market. And some of these clients actually were diversified in different markets. The last thing actually was very important is what about the scaling up of startups? So there is a startup that has a potential for scaling up. So that the third program that we did which was actually access to investors. So we started to attract investors to invest our own startup. And what was actually a dream where I can find a faculty member or researcher or a student pitching in a network of investors event happening in KAUST to pitch about a product or startup coming out of his or her own research. This is actually some of the investors or investment funds that invested in our startups. We also started our own venture capital fund, part of Wadi Mecca. That's another spin-off of Wadi Mecca company. So Wadi Mecca becoming a holding company to do many activities. So this is the results. We were dreaming. And many of the people said to us, you are dreaming and you are too ambitious, it's not going to happen, this is academia. So we have been hearing all these things. It was very challenging to do this transformation. And imagine the transformation of an academic or a student or even an entrepreneur in the market to join forces to do this commercialization of innovation. And these are some of the results. For me, actually, these KPIs is not now any more important, actually. We removed them from our KPI. It's not about patents or papers. Trust me, like thousands of papers and patents has been produced and published in highly cited journals in the whole world that has zero impact on the economy or economic development in different countries. So these are the real value, where you have a commercialization of innovation. You have a startup that creates a value to the country or solving a solution, a problem, and foster the economy, and also job creation, and also start, and then the link with the investors. The investors, when they came to us, it was a sign that we have the potential to produce a product or a startup that attracts the investor. So it's viable to the market, not only something theoretical or in the mind of a researcher or an inventor. Sorry for being harsh on academics, but I've been in both worlds, so I understand this very well. So I'm a president now of a university, so I have the privilege to do that. So just to summarize, the platform that we created has 3 main programs. This is the framework that we came up after many activities and programs we did. We have now 3 programs. One is the Innovation Center, where it supports prototyping, product development. So it takes an idea into a product. The second program actually takes the product into a startup. So it provides mentoring, seed fund, and co-working space. And that's the practice in accelerators, university accelerators, and incubators worldwide. The third one is actually the seed fund, because some of these startups will go into the valley of death. So to recover that or to solve that problem or to resolve it is you have to have a VC vehicle where actually it supports startups into being a scale-up and being a unicorn in the future. So to summarize, what we tried actually through this exercise is علم ينتفع به. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. ما شاء الله دكتور نبيل ما شاء الله. Now I think what the Valley of Mecca is doing now, it is in the line of the Vision 2030 of the King of Saudi Arabia, right? Sure. And now we need to take your invitation to Valley of Mecca. Now, if you agree, we can arrange a trip. So during the annual meeting, if any one of you wants to go to this trip, please, Brother Najib, have a registration page for everyone who wants to go to this trip, name, email, and the time, so that we can arrange the trip and we send them email, so that inshallah this trip will take place during the annual meeting to Valley of Mecca. Inshallah ta'ala.
You can make Umrah also.
Inshallah. Barakallah fikum. Now, I think we come to the NGO part of this session, and we have Professor Ghada, please.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله أجمعين. أنا يعني هنبدأ القصة. We will talk about rule of innovation, where I will give a case study, Arab Science and Technology Foundation. يعني I will start with some myths about R&D that we in the past in academic field they always mentioned to us about R&D. They start that if you do with the basic research with $1, you will gain $10 in development and 100 in produced products. And also they mentioned to us that industrial research is always opposite to academic freedom. Both of them not true. If you focus in research and you tend to develop your socioeconomic development, $1 maybe gain more than $1,000. And the other thing, industrial, and to connect university with the industrial and with the people outside the university, is this the real freedom for the researcher, not just be incubated inside the university. Also, they mentioned to us that the basic research is very, very expensive, and this is also not true. If you focus in what you are targeting, if you focus that you need to drive the market to something to solve problems, you will find the gain and you will find that it's not expensive. Also, they mentioned that industrial and research academia should design to attend to the market. We believe that if you need to do good research, you be market-driven. Yani the research should driven the market to the future and forecast what will happen in the future according to the situation and the platform that exists in the university and in the society. Also, they mentioned that the patent is product and the product is a business, and it's also not true. About 0.5% of patents become product, and also about 5 from 1,000 product penetrate the market and be success. So we have to change our mentality and our mind. If you have a patent or product and you don't have a good business plan and you don't have a market study, you will not penetrate the market. Also, they mentioned that technology transfer office is very important in academia. Yes, it's very important, but it should be led with academic people and business people and people from the from the NGOs and the people who work in the floor. Yani the academic research or the academic community should connect, not just isolated and just the doctor mentioned that we should do just papers and make an international publication. This is very important, but the important that our university have to connect to their communities and help people and to generate jobs and money. Also, they mentioned that entrepreneurship is dependent on the entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is a process, and the entrepreneur is a person, and both of them should be in the ecosystem to complete the circle and to get some results. Now, as you see, all Muslim countries and all also Arab countries, they do a lot of initiative to support people for innovation and entrepreneurship. UAE, King Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, all the countries try to do good things for their community. But still, we don't gain what we need because the ecosystem didn't close. We still need someone to take the gap between academia and the ideas, because after we work in Arab Science and Technology Foundation, we found that the idea is not only coming from academic or research center, it's coming from the community, it's coming from people who are not educated because they know the problems, they know what happened in the ground. So ASTIF is a pan-Arab foundation, gave a success story for the people who need to see the result, real results. Let me start with just overview about ASTIF, what ASTIF, and how we engage the Arab RDI and community, and exercise generate success in what and how. ASTIF started in 2000s, and it's with a passion and will of academic people who always gathering and say we have a good publication, we do a lot of things, but we didn't do anything for our community. So they asked His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, His Highness Dr. Sultan bin Mohammed Al-Qasmi, and he believed in them, and they gave them degree to work around on all the Arab countries and also in the Muslim countries to connect the academic with the community, to connect the great minds with the floors, with the people who need support. So ASTIF started in 2000s. ASTIF work with the tools in the community, with the situation in the community, without complaining. We just see all the challenges and all the problems inside the area as opportunity to develop our people and our nation. ASTIF do a lot of activities, as you see. We're starting from academia, R&D, industry, and technology parks, to transfer of technology offices, all of things. We deal with all of things because we are NGO. We don't have this bureaucratic rules or regulations. We just sit as a board member, mention that we have the situation in the Arab countries or in the Middle East. We will start to do this and this according to the need of the community, not need of our rules or regulations. So I believe this is the key of success, that you have a fast vehicles. The government have abundant rules, abundant regulation. It's very not easy to change every year. We can change as an NGO and move around and move in the very far ways with the people in the floor. We take all the ideas from these until to go for the market, as it's not easy in the beginning. As Dr. mentioned to some academic or professors that I need you to sit with investors. It's very difficult. It's very far minds. This is in this side and this is in the other side. So ASTIF play the tricks when they meet in the right time. ASTIF innovation, the system toward the ecosystem, we work in all these stages: capacity buildings, idea, innovation process, and the prototype, seed fund in the early stage, then early stage fund, and this is the sum activity that we do for going to the market. If we name the activity that we do in each stage, for example, we do innovation, technology, entrepreneurship, education, workshops, and the programs. In extraction of innovation, we run a lot of competitions like business plan competition, made in the Arab world competition, industrial startup competition, Europe satellite navigation in the Arab region competition, and lately Arab capabilities for development and innovation initiative. To access finance, we also run a lot of programs like Investing in Technology Forum, Angel Investor Networks, and Virtual Incubator. And every year, because we need to give a success story for the people and raise the morale, we celebrating with the companies, startup companies, and we start with the entrepreneurs for the year and the innovation for the year, just to raise the morale and to mention to our people that you have a great mind, your genetic is perfect, you have a lot of things that you can do. And we try also to change the media, the media showcase that we don't have this great mind. We have a great mind, our genetics is perfect, but we need someone to encourage us and to put us in the first stage. This is what we are doing now in ASTIF. ASTIF, if we brief what we are doing, we're bridging between the ideas, between the minds and the money, between the mind and the investors. We make the bridge and do two parts of the dead valley. ASTIF deal with the people like in people stage. We change the culture. We spread the innovation idea, why the innovation is important for the person and then for the country, why innovation is important, and it's a must. It's not like it's a lifestyle. It's not just for legacy or something for fancy. Innovation is a must to hold your life and to do something for the future for your kids. Also, we deal with the process inside the government. We give them success stories in ASTIF, how we will manage and deal with the research, and then the government asks us to do some consultant for them. Also, we have a good partners with all entities in any country we will deal we work in. Also, we provide some services for the academic and private sectors to penetrate the market with a new idea. Our tool is programming, projects, properties. We provide incubators for people in ASTIF office. Also, we have infrastructure. We have investment to connect with the people. Yani after 18 years, we have, alhamdulillah, good reputation with the people who have money, like banks, like investors, and they trust that we are doing something good for our nation, so they try always to help us and help on our activities. We start as academic with the academic mind. Conferences, we arrange about 245 conferences on all Arab countries. The main conferences just to connect and to know what's next, how we can go further. And after we work with the conference, and still now we work with the conferences, we start to do scientific outlook, specialized conferences in each category in science, or in technology, or engineer, or medicine, just to see what's the new and how we can apply this. Then we found that women is far from technology and science, and we need to give success stories about women, because in ASTIF we believe the woman is the rules to lead the families. So we encourage women to support their families by using science and technology, even if her background is not science and technology. How she can use the new platforms to sell her products, to spread her ideas, how she can encourage her kids to use the technology in the right manner. So we do a lot of conferences to encourage women, to connect people, because now the open world, we can establish about 7 networks. Every network to connect the professional people with each other, to communicate and to see which problem they can solve with each other. So we make a biotechnology network, women in science and technology network, nanotechnology network, entrepreneurship, innovation, and we have a lot of networks. And about patent and licensing, we believe it's important, but it's something tool, not a must. So we use to spread the new knowledge about licensing the patents, to make the understanding for the people inside the university or the people who have idea, how they can use their patent if they don't have money, how they can license the idea, how they can collaborate with other investors and do something in real investment. To expand and exchange idea, and because ASTIF need to penetrate and to give success story, we not compete with anyone. We just need to be the moderations between all the different minds. We signed a lot, about 400 MOUs with all entities in science and technology and investing in the Arab world. For RDI funds, we sponsor about multi or tons of R&D researches with about $30 million, but the output is not what we need. We have a good publication from these researchers, but we still, ASTIF are focused to help the community, to see the revenue in job creation and empower people, empower youth, and to see in the development, in socio-economic development. So we change, okay, we will do this, but it's not a must. We have to go for something else to support and launching many initiatives to change the idea about research. So we make initiative for steer R&D and activities, engage women in science and technology initiative and research to support science and universities. Initiative for trained teachers. We found that the idea of right science or right research, it's not only in the university. We have a problem before the university. So we work with the K-12 before university, and also we work with the teacher. We try to teach the science and technology and engineering teacher in the university how they can make their students have this passion to work in good science. And lately we found that, as we mentioned, that the two minds is different. The inventor are talking about patent research papers, and the investors may mention, I need, if I put this $100, how it come to me. So we make something called Investing in Technology Forum to connect this idea and the people to present in front of investors, and investors, if they believe in them, they pay for them and or share with them the risk to make their startup. This is some photos from the competition that we run, business plan competition. One have a good idea, but he cannot penetrate the market because he don't have the market study, or he doesn't have the business plan. We trained him how he can make the business plan, how he can make market study. Also, we have industrial competition, a lot of competition. And the last one, Albaz, for developing and the innovation initiative. This is for all people inside community, whatever he's old, it's not different for us, whatever his background, we are focused. If you have a good idea, come to us and we will tell you in which stage you are, what you need, what the training that you need to go further to penetrate the market. Also, this is business plan training. And this is some programs we make it for the school, the pre-college schools, to make like Edison experience, to live the Edison experience, to innovate and do some good works inside his schools. Lately, we launched 2 initiatives, and it gets more welcome from the Arab region. Waqf, it's awqaf, something that we ask people. We have awqaf, and awqaf is a good source to support our community, and we spread the idea, and the people welcome this idea. Also with the IDB, we make the virtual incubator, that something like a physical incubator, but it's virtual. We exchange the idea, the investors meet the inventors, and they can solve some problems. And this was very good for people to collaborate. So ASTIF, in brief, we are connecting this side with this side because they always far from each other in the right time. We just not mention this. We have some proof that we are doing in the last 18 years a good works. 5 minutes. This is the achievement that we are doing. You can read. And this is our companies that it's coming. We try all source of fund. Angel fund, venture capital, 3Fs, institutional, non-institutional. So this is our stories, success stories. This company we already established in Iraq, in UAE, in Egypt, in Tunisia. We have all these companies. And this is also one of our companies is doing commercialization and development and connect transfer of technology. And Vestix, this Vestix, one of our success companies. Now it's valued for $150 million. It's coming from Arabic research, and this is very success story for our youth to understand that we can do it. It's easy, but you have to focus in what you need to solve for your community. And this is the last story, Ma'in Highline. In ICT sector, this is our companies, the new companies. Some of them continue, and some of them change, some of them fail, depend on this. And thanks for people who support ASTIF and support our area by supporting ASTIF activities. This is the last thing, last slide, that ASTIF have a root. Now we have ASTIF Innovation Lab. ASTIF Innovation Lab to polish the idea or extract the innovation and make it in the product or industrial stage. Then, if you have this good product, Ghadaqa, it's social marketing. We make marketing for the people and also for the inventor or the people who have the idea themselves to change the mentality in the region that we have this person doing these good things for your community. If he needs fund, he can go for startup seed fund. And if he needs to be incubated, we incubate him in ASTIF Innovation Hub. This is ASTIF, and thank you. Shukran.
أهلا وسهلا. يعني نحن ننحني أمامك أمام هذه الأعمال. Really, it was really this great efforts as an NGO, and I hope we can find similar NGO as role model, because this is really help. And I thought in the beginning is an international organization or regional organization, but it seems the NGO and NGO here is no go without NGO. Thank you. Now we come to the cream of the session with the international organization. So we start now with OECD, Mr. Allen.
Thank you very much for this invitation. And I would perhaps just start by introducing myself and my organization, which perhaps you have heard about the OECD. But just to tell you what we do, our motto is better policies for better lives. So you can think of the OECD as a think tank which gathers together 35 member countries from all the continents, and also works with key partners and through regional programs, outreaches to other regions in the world. And here is my colleague Rolf Schwarz, who is representing the MENA program. So this is a regional program of the OECD, which is working with this region on specific issues like investment, like access to finance, like SME development, etc., and transferring basically the good practice of the OECD countries to this region. So I myself work in the Science, Technology and Innovation Directorate of the OECD, and we have a committee for science and technology policy where the representatives of 42 countries, so 35 member countries plus some non-members, gather and exchange good practices about innovation policy. How can we make innovation more effective in our countries? Not only through innovation centers. We have heard some very, very impressive examples here from the Arab world. I'm really very impressed how far you have got. But let's say from the OECD viewpoint, we focus on the policy side of things and the global policies which can work in favor of this. And here I have an example of, let's say, an OECD country policy review. This is a review of Malaysia, one of the countries, and we have worked with the AIM on this review. And basically, this is something where we go and we examine in depth the policies of a country to see where and how we can improve this ecosystem from a policy point of view. Now, what do I mean by this? Here you have a depiction of a market-based innovation system. And this is a little bit the illustration of what has been already addressed by previous speakers. You have here the knowledge components, which is developed by research institutions, by academia. You need for that skilled human resources, and you need the global networks of science and technology. And then you have the businesses, and that's these linkages, and that's where the innovation centers basically work and have to create these linkages. We heard this from the previous speakers. And why do we need that? Well, because the businesses are in touch with the consumers, and if you want to be market oriented, you have to be there. Now, what does policy have to do with this? You see, there is this L-shaped shape here, which tells you that policy can actually have a leverage on each of these parts of the innovation system, and can foster the better functioning of this. And the crucial part is this linkages part, and we have heard this very clearly also from the example in Mecca that it's not about the publications and the patents, it's about how much you actually commercialize. To policy itself, the way we look at the policy which can foster innovation at the OECD. We start with on the top box here, what we call the framework conditions for innovation. What does that mean? It means that basically you need to have basic conditions for business, okay? You cannot do innovation if you have bad framework conditions for business. So if you have difficulties establishing companies, difficulties getting licenses, permits, and so on, so the basic conditions for doing business have to be good. You have to have labor and financial markets. You have to have communication infrastructures, and so on. So that's the basics, okay? Then you can start doing the dedicated science, technology, and innovation policy. And in this policy, you have different types of measures. On the top here, you see the demand-side measures, and very often we forget that this is about public procurement, okay? Governments in many countries are the largest purchasers of goods and services, okay? You want. If you do, let's say, functional requirements, if you say, I need a building for so and so many people, which is heated or cooled to 20 degrees the whole year round, this leaves some space for innovation for the company which proposes it. If you say, I need exactly, this type of building with such dimensions and such thickness of walls and so on, then you basically go just for the lowest price, and there's not very much innovation. You can have, of course, then supply-side measures, which are, grants, R&D incentives, and so on. These are the classical measures in favor of innovation. But then you can also have policies to enhance innovation competencies of firms. You can have policies to support investment in science and technology and innovation. And you can have policies to strengthen linkages within innovation systems. And this linkages, this is I think, the topic of this session. Now, going into more detail about the linkages, I will talk about the triple helix model. Probably many of you have heard about that model, and it has been somehow implicit in what the previous speakers have said. Basically, the idea is that you have three types of actors. You have the industry, university, and government, okay, working together for the innovation, and they have their classical positioning, okay? Industry is there to create value, to transform the knowledge into value, into products and services, and create value. You have the university who is there to create this knowledge, and you have the government who is there to create a favorable environment and governance of these interactions. Now, this is the historical positioning, but today we see that this position is moving, okay? That you have actually, that the industry can do very basic research and development. Big companies do that. They have big laboratories, and they do that. You can have universities who are doing spin-offs. Okay, so you have the entrepreneurial university, which is then going into the entrepreneurial sphere, and you can have the government who has, for instance, creates financing opportunities, becomes the financier. So you see that these roles are shifting, and that's the idea of this triple helix, which means that basically the three actors are moving together and changing roles, and this is what again then foster this very interesting public-private partnership and foster innovation. Now, when we talk about the actors in the triple helix system, we have the government actors, the business actors, the R&D actors, okay? The government actors are the relevant ministries, local governments, funding agencies, public seed or VC funds. You have the business actors, which are businesses, business associations, clusters, chambers of commerce, private VCs, business angels. What I would like to underline here is that we have heard a lot about startups, and I know that this session is about startups, but I just want to also mention that what is important is to think about not a few dozens of startups as the only, this is of course very important to create startups, but you do have several hundreds or thousands of potential innovations who can go through interactions with more mature companies. So we should not forget that innovation is not only about startups. Startups is very important, but cooperation with more mature, both SMEs and large companies is very important. So this triple helix model also works with mature companies. The R&D actors, of course, universities, research institutes, academic research groups, and centers of excellence. Now, the facilitators are the technology transfer offices, the incubators, the innovation centers, and of course the science and technology parks. These are the facilitators are the ones which are going to make this triple helix work. Okay. Now, how do these triple helix interactions help overcome the barriers to innovation? Okay, so we have identified a few barriers. A barrier, for instance, is that the researchers, they do not know the market demand, and they do not very often orient their research towards what is really marketable. We have heard that there are some very, very strong successes in this sense. Now, in triple helix, how does it help? Well, basically, the businesses act as information brokers to communicate the consumer needs, so the demand pool. So if you create very good interaction between businesses, and as I mentioned, also mature businesses, not only startups, and they can tell you what their clients are looking for, and that will create then a demand pool, rather than having an academic starting from a blue sky idea, okay, and trying to push it. You have both the push and the pull, okay, and usually the pull is more important. We have heard in Malaysia they have a specific initiative to create this thinking of creating the pull, basically being empathetic with the customer, and that is basically the future. That's the way to go. You can have also the problem that some possible innovations can create a new demand, but the market test is difficult for researchers, okay? You can have this market push, you can have a good idea from the researcher, okay? But the researcher does not have the resources or the skills to be able to test this with the market. So if he can very early on interact with a business which can test his idea, this can be something which can help. The marketing of an innovation may need a new regulation. Okay, we hear, for instance, today about drones and self-driving cars and so on. So all of these things are introducing huge regulatory changes. Okay, artificial intelligence and so on. Imagine just that everybody can have a drone and fly, right? The flying car. We hear now, it's in the region, right? It's in Dubai, as I heard, right? You're going to introduce flying taxis. I don't know exactly how you on the regulatory way. How do you actually regulate this activity to make sure that these flying taxis don't collide with aircraft and with each other and so on? It creates a whole new demand on the regulatory side. So that's why it's important also to have the government side in this triple helix early on. And you can also have a problem of this valley of death, and you mentioned this, the valley of death, which can have different forms. But one of the very frequent form is that the innovation at its beginning is very expensive for the customers initially, but it creates positive externalities. For instance, the electric car. And the electric car today is more expensive than a petrol car, okay? But it creates positive externalities. It creates zero emissions. Therefore, some governments can then create subsidies to encourage people to buy electric cars because this is good for the environment. And eventually, of course, with the increasing numbers, you will have economies of scale, and the prices will go down. So all of these things illustrate how the triple helix can help overcome the barriers to innovation. What I want to say here is that it's very important to have this a very good interaction between government and business and academia. Now you have some issues. All these things are not evident. They're not self-evident. You have three communities which have relatively different values and are not used to talking to each other, okay? The problem with government, for instance, is that knowledge is the driver. Yes, I will finish. The knowledge is the driver of economic development and human development, but you need to address the societal challenges, and the spending for R&D is seen as important, but tends to be reduced in situation of budgetary constraints, and we have seen that during the crisis. In the industry, you see people saying the knowledge is relevant as a driver of value creation, but they have a short-term focus and they want short-term profit. And the academia is, knowledge for knowledge's sake and long-term. So you have some barriers, and I think I will stop here because my time is out.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much. Really, I always impressed with the framework and the panoramic view of OECD about different issues, especially innovation. Thank you very much. Now we come to the icing of this session with Dr. Melika.
It's slightly humbling to come after 5 previous speakers to be announced this way, and also to be the last one in the panel. So I'm expecting the time is over. We'll be coming sooner rather than later. So I'll try to really be snappy. So my name is Millie. I work for United Nations Development Program, one of the UN agencies in the system that operates in about 170 countries. Innovation is a very, very young baby for UNDP. It's an agenda that's about 5 or 6 years old, and we started innovation in the UNDP much later than a number of our donor countries as well as client countries. So we had to really be on a steep learning curve if we were to be relevant for our clients. So there are 3 things that we do for our clients. One is we try to identify what's coming around the bend. What is the next generation of development services for our client governments? The second aspect is what is the new set of skills that public sector needs to have in order to grapple with some of the complex challenges that it is facing. And the third one is, I think, the one that I'd like to talk a little bit about today is how do governments engage with very complex challenges that they're facing today, because the business as usual does not work. We tend to underestimate the risk of continuing business as usual, and we tend to drive blindfolded off the cliff and overestimate the risk of doing things differently. And we find with some of our clients, this is a policy innovation lab out of the government of Georgia that we helped build, that the governments are more and more inclined to create mechanisms to engage with some of these issues differently. So everybody knows this animal, right? Platypus. Does anybody know the story of how platypus came into Europe? So when platypus was introduced into Europe around 70s, the British scientists thought that the animal was a hoax. And it took about a decade for the scientific and biological community to recognize this species as legit. Okay? So why is this important for us today? What we see in UNDP is that the governments are facing a different type of a character, a different type of an outfit that's starting to play in the same play zone that has been sort of confounded to the remit of the governments. And they're challenging the systems and the ways in which the governments have been solving some of these issues, which represents on one side an opportunity, but in the region that I cover, which is Europe and CIS, very much a real threat and risk to the way the governments function, and we call them sort of policy mutants or superheroes. Let me give you, because of the time, because I'm the last one, I'm going to give you just a couple of examples of what we mean by a policy mutant, a couple of examples of what these new types of outfits are, and then how we support our client governments to actually engage with them. So I'm going to skip. Okay, so this is a startup that's premised on the fact that anybody here for National Statistical Institute? Okay, good. This is really good because they would probably be throwing something at me. So these guys are premised on the fact that national statistical institutes will be a thing of the past 5 years from now, right? They believe that NSOs are too slow to produce the types of information that the governments need to be able to budget the public finances efficiently. They are able to produce food trends 25 days ahead of the official statistics. Right? So 2 different speeds. So what do you as the government do when somebody like this shows up in the market? You have use of blockchain, right, and Bitcoin. You have increasingly governments putting their land registries on blockchain. Virtual realities, right? You have virtual realities in the banking sector, incentivizing savings. You have virtual reality being used to stimulate savings. So when the students were faced with the older version of themselves, they were more prone to say 30% save more of their paycheck because they were looking into the future and themselves 25 years from now, right? How many governments did you know use these types of mechanisms to incentivize savings? So when we talk about innovation centers, when we work with our client governments to set up innovation labs, what we're really talking about is creating systems. So the bad line is the red line, innovation to prevent the decline, and we see a lot of the governments playing along the red line. Right? And then we see a lot of these policy mutants or platypuses, if you will, creating entirely new systems, entirely new normal. Governments like Georgia, Macedonia, Armenia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka are creating innovation centers as a way to start engaging with these new types of players in order to create value for their citizens. And there is no framework for working with some of these actors. All right? There is absolutely no blueprint with which governments can engage with them. So let me give you just a couple of examples about the labs that we have helped build within the countries and the governments that we work with. So the government of Serbia is using blockchain technology to speed up the transfer of remittances and to reduce. So the World Bank does this research every 6 months. What is the average rate of remittance transfer? It's about 7%. The prototype that we are just about to roll out would reduce that to about 1 to 1.2%. Now, just think about the value that then keeps going into the pocket of the poor citizens that are receiving these remittances. Crowdfunding for SMEs, right? So the colleague from OECD talked about some prerequisites to make innovation work, but what we also find is that those governments that do really poorly on the World Bank doing business reports, so in other words, they have a lot of red tape, are the same governments where their SMEs tend to mobilize a lot of money through crowdfunding. The other way in which you can read that is that these businesses are finding a way around the red tape because they're not going to wait for UNDP and to OECD to come and help them out. They need to make money today. So the question for the governments is, how do you help them in the short term scale those efforts up and be able to access finances from less traditional markets quicker so they can push out products, create jobs, and bring revenues? In Moldova, we're using energy consumption data as a proxy for how many people are in rural areas. So if the government is about to do town halls, or if it's about to run an election, or if it's about to decide where to invest into road infrastructure and schools, we actually have real-time data as to how many people are in which parts of the rural country. Now, that's an example of a different speed, right? If you look at the census that's done in that country, the last one was done about 8 years ago. And if you're about to make public infrastructure investment decisions based on that data, you're likely to be sinking a lot of money in completely misplaced places. Another thing that a lot of our labs do, and I think this is the last slide, is randomized control trials. So there is a lot of assumptions under if you give grants or easy access to finance to SMEs, they're likely to create jobs, right? What we're actually doing is testing that assumption. So we have 3 sort of groups. One group of SMEs is going to get easy access to finance. One is not going to get anything, so they're a control group. And the third one is going to get access to training opportunities and mentorship from their industry partners to be able to advise the government before they invest tens of millions of euros into the SME strategy, what actually works. Last slide. one of the things that we're learning, and again, we're babies in this field, right? So take what we were saying with a grain of salt, because we have had to be in a very steep learning curve, is when we started advising governments of setting up innovation labs, most of those labs were really set up in the Western Europe, Northern America. And a lot of that research told us that those innovation labs are like throwing a grenade into a bureaucracy, right? And our colleagues were really proud of that, right? Since a lot of the innovation labs sprouted up in different parts of the world, and we're actually finding something very different. For Europe and CIS, one of the main conclusions is these labs are exactly the opposite of throwing a grenade into a system that's already volatile enough, right? These labs are actually being considered a source of stability for mid-level public servants who actually still have to do the work while the top-level governments continue changing for this reason or not. So at the end of the year, and this is a plug, together with Nesta, and I know some of the colleagues who were talking here have been working with Nesta, we will be putting together a couple of day discussion on what types of political conditions are ripe for setting up innovation labs, and how do different types of political conditions shape the way that innovation labs are structured and the type of services that they provide both to the governments but also to the citizens. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Melike. Thank you very much. As you know all, that the Innovation Lab is a very powerful tool for the innovation, especially for the youth. Speaking of the youth, you know, the theme of this annual meeting is about youth empowerment. Now, before we open question and answer from the crowd, I would like to ask our speakers to share with us how innovation help youth empowerment, if they have any practical example that they can share with the crowd before we open the question and answer. We start with Dato Mark.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I did mention in my presentation was the Design Thinking School that we started 5 years ago. We've trained about 3,000 youths, as I mentioned, in the age group 20 to 35. In the schools, we have separate programs, but specifically in that age group, we trained about 3,000. And a lot of success stories coming out of that. There were many individuals, after going through that program, not just going back to their organizations and using design thinking, but even a lot of startups as well. For example, there was one young lady who, after going through the program, she had a startup called GoGet, which is basically providing, running errands for busy executives in the city. And in the space of 6 months, she had 2,000 people working for that startup. And so design thinking actually is a very useful tool because it really forces you to think about your end customer. How can you come up with better ways of serving that end customer? So you literally step into the shoes with the end customer and you start generating lots of ideas. And then you actually go and test that ideas in what we call rapid prototyping. And so through that sort of process, the chances of a startup or implementing an idea actually increases in terms of success.
Very interesting. Very interesting. MashaAllah. So this is from Malaysia experience. Let's see from UAE.
So back in the country, in the UAE, a majority of the people who works with innovation are young in terms of age. Probably going to the experience of the Ministry of Finance specifically, we're a group of young people who have been recently joining the ministry. And those are the advocates of innovation in the ministry. Those are the ones who are leading the ministry on the right path that has been designed by the government for innovation. And this has been topped by the ministry being awarded as the most innovative government agency in the recent cycle of the Distinguished Performance, Sheikh Hamad bin Rashid Distinguished Performance Award. And this is a very good sign because most of the young people get motivated with such kind of achievements, recognitions, and not to mention that the likelihood to face resistance to change behavior from those people are very low. And this is exactly what we needed to foster innovation as a culture, as a way of conducting projects and developing new ideas in the ministry.
MashaAllah, very good. Now we come to Dr. Nabil.
I think there are three themes of engaging the youth. Based on the first one is actually on know it. So knowing what is innovation is all about and how they can innovate and even into the commercialization of innovation. So in terms of that, it was a couple of activities, events, I would call, for raising the awareness of the importance of innovation in the knowledge economy. The second thing is actually experience it. So some of the, I would say, the activities that we did at Wadi Makkah was on you experience innovation. So you have the prototyping center, whatever activities or services you provide for them. So when they experience it, there are sometimes when you raise the awareness, but you don't provide the services to help them, it's only awareness so that they can't. The last thing is actually practicing, which is actually being an inventor and an entrepreneur that transform an idea into a startable product. And in that exercise, we're having the accelerator program, where they get the funding, the mentoring, the coaching services. So these different know it, experience it, being it, is the different categories of services you can provide. And let me tap onto actually a very important initiative happening in Saudi Arabia in alignment with 2030, which is the establishment of Prince Mohammed bin Salman College for Business and Entrepreneurship. Because there is a great gap, I think, in the region here on focusing on entrepreneurial education in terms of entrepreneurship knowledge, skills, and also the entrepreneurial mindset is missing in the region. So that's the aim of this new college that is being established actually a year ago. And that will provide actually a multiple of educational programs, executive education, continuing education, and also the formal MBA programs focusing on building the entrepreneurial mindset, because that's very important. Sometimes you provide the skills, the set of knowledge, but the entrepreneurial mindset transformation or being it happening is not there. So that's in short what programs activities.
Is there any age restriction for the?
No, it's for all.
Very good. Okay, we come to Professor Ghada.
To start, and asked if we believe that innovation is anti-aging. To say youth with innovation, we mention any age. And asked if we believe anyone, even whatever his age, he can become youth if he work innovation and he have this innovative mind. Innovation for youth, asked if we success to establish 142 companies, 75% of them for youth. And when you start give them this passion to work, they start to be good citizens. They understand the wealth, they understand the meaning of the land, and they understand the mabda' man ahyaha. They work to deal with all people in all the world with this open mind, open peace. They feel peace. So, and as if we work in this, also we have this success story. We work in Upper Egypt with some poor peoples who don't have the resources. We train them how they can use the new technology to do business and to teach themselves online. Astif have this innovation lab mobility going everywhere in the poor areas. So we start to feel that there is really change for these youth. They are willing to support their country. They stop complaining and they start to connect with their citizens and with their community. Thanks.
MashaAllah. Dr. Allen.
Thank you. Well, I would echo this opinion that basically it's not only the youth which is innovative. We very often associate youth with innovativeness, but I think at any age, and also it can also help that you have some experience in your profession and in your the experience which can be then used for innovative ideas. But since the question was about youth, I will answer that question. Well, first I would say that what we see is a very, very big opportunity for internships in startups for young students. Internships are very important as a source of gaining experience for young students, and they're being made more and more a mandatory part of the curricula in most OECD countries. And I think this is something which is positive, which is win-win, especially for the startups, which then offer the students a new experience of an unconventional type of company, and which can then open their mind to perhaps part of them, a small percentage. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone, right? It's for a small percentage, but this small percentage can then maybe show its potential after graduation to create their own startup companies, or maybe later in their career. A second thing is incubators. Very many universities create incubators at the campus, which then helps the students develop their ideas, which start maybe through some innovation competitions and so on. They get a prize, and then they can develop their idea. Some universities also have what they call junior enterprises. So basically set up as companies where students can actually work and work on projects and win some projects and get paid for that, which is also that. And then maybe I would just say that in the educational aspect, what is important is to create more in the curricula about entrepreneurial learning. Okay, entrepreneurial learning is usually something which is not sufficiently developed and relegated only to maybe some business studies and so on. Whereas even in STEM courses for engineers and so on, you have to teach them some basis of entrepreneurship, because one day perhaps they will have a brilliant idea, but which they will not know how to market. So I think entrepreneurship learning is very important, and as well creativity learning. Creativity is not necessarily sufficiently encouraged in the education systems today, because what we're taught in school is learn your lesson and repeat the lesson, okay, to the professor. You're not encouraged to be creative and to invent something new. Usually people who are too creative are seen as bad students, and this is something which should change.
Very good. Well, Dr. Malika, if you can share some example from UNDP. They have a lot, I think.
Sure. So I will give an example of this entrepreneurship spirit and its application in the public sector. So what we have been seeing is an emergence of an entirely new social sector with youth at the very forefront of it. So if you think of, for example, Wikipedia, who is beating Encyclopedia Britannica at its own game. If you think of OpenStreetMap versus Garmin, right? Now, if you think who is behind those movements, there isn't one person who you can invite for a meeting. There isn't a bank account or a title of a company that you can engage with. So there is a mirror image of these sort of global movements happening in countries that we're seeing, where youth are applying this entrepreneurship spirit to resolve some of the pressing social challenges. So you have 3 volunteers, even though they won't consider themselves volunteers, who a couple of years ago in Ukraine, in the middle of the revolution, came up with a procurement system that at the very first year of application saved the government 55 million euros. And they were subsequently brought into the government, right? You have youth who, again, somebody will call them volunteers, but it's an entirely new concept of what a volunteer is in Kosovo, designing a system to track and prevent corruption that within 4 years, the system that they have designed has become 4th most trusted institution in the territory of Kosovo. So what we as UNDP try to do being operative word, try to find the ways in which the governments can engage with a type of an actor that looks very differently to a traditional NGO or a think tank or a university, under the assumption that this networked youth can do certain things. So people helping people as an alternative to public service.
Thank you very much. Actually, we need more discussion among the panel. However, we borrow from the innovation area, the business accelerator, innovation accelerator, and we accelerate, these things. Now we open the floor for any question from the crowd. To the panel. Yes, brother. Your name and where you are from.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. Thanks a lot for the very nice presentations by the panelists. I am Hussam Abdel Gawad from Egypt, assistant professor in Cairo University and also director at SETS International. I just want to bring it back to the last comment of youth. Just tell you a very quick story to try to convince you that if we talk about youth today, this is probably too late. I was watching a news with my kids, watching 10 years old 11 years old kids innovating a robot that basically makes cotton candy in Egypt. And then one of the kids at 10 years old said, I was the one responsible for coding. Then my 5 years old son asked me what is coding. Then my 8 years old daughter told him, you can Google it. So if we think that kids from that young age can start thinking about coding and having access to information and data, then I think we should start much earlier than the youth stage.
Okay, so you suggest that to start to accelerate the youth now.
Well, yeah, I think, by 10 years old, if you know how to code, then there is a lot to do after that when it comes to the youth age.
Okay. I think we have some comment, Dr. Walid, and Dr. Kumar.
I agree 100% actually. To cultivate innovation, you have to start earlier. I'm talking about even before K, K to 12 and before. And unfortunately, in many educational systems, not to be specific, it's actually anti-innovation, especially the culture of, memorization and reading and knowledge cultivation, rather actually critical thinking. And there was actually the start of the innovative enhancement of design thinking education in K to 12, actually, where we go earlier at school.
I fully agree with that observation as well. In fact, one of the things I mentioned as well is that we have a program for our both primary and secondary schools looking at higher order thinking tools, looking at how to encourage critical thinking. And what we're doing now, we're actually developing a template which initially is going to be offered to the school system, initially on a voluntary basis, for the schools to actually adopt this different approach to teaching and learning, which is going to focus on critical thinking and developing different skills. So trying to move away from the rote learning that our education system, unfortunately, all these years has been the main focus. Because, in fact, 2 years ago, the Education Ministry changed the way exam questions are being asked as well, to put a higher percentage requiring critical thinking. There were a lot of complaints from the parents. The parents were saying, how is my child going to study for these exams? But the point is, you need to be able to use these critical thinking skills. And so we're moving in that direction. We'd like to do it faster, but it might even take a whole generation to achieve that. And talking specifically about things like coding, things like computational skills can actually start at a much younger age, even in preschool. Computational skills, looking at things like spatial recognition, pattern recognition, and not just coding. So these are elements that we think would actually drive the innovation agenda.
Any comment? Yeah. Do you have?
I do.
Yeah, please.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, again, I completely agree, and I think education is one way to deal with it, even though I think whatever it is that we start investing today, addressing kids from, I have a 3-year-old, so I'm kind of thinking she needs to be addressed right now with some of these issues. We're going to see the benefits maybe 10, 15 years from now. I think in parallel to that, there's another way in which we can address it. Cities in the world globally procure 10% of global GDP, right? And they do that by awarding contracts in 85% to companies they already know. That's striking, right? Now, if we do something that Alan has mentioned, if we refocus, if we innovate the procurement away, or rather towards sort of putting in functional requirements, we might open an opportunity for a 10-year-old in Egypt to actually be one of the solvers to City of Cairo's procurement notice that's not going to require writing 300 pages of an RFQ, but actually producing a prototype that can address that challenge. So I think we need to be aware of, doing a lot of things in parallel in order to be able to start reaping some benefits today as well as 10, 15 years from now.
Thank you. Actually, just to, in these days, the change is really quite vast. And you can see now we have a new generation called millennial generation. I'm sure the generation following the millennial generation will be completely different than what we think. They have different mindset, and this mindset, I think, is changing as well. So I expect the next generation will be much tougher. Now we start asking our kids about some issues. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by this? Well, I think we have our brother.
My name is Hadi Bushnak. I am happy I started Taiba Knowledge Waqf. I am a trustee and a founder of that to implement what you just discussed, education. Because I learned over 50 years practicing industry and business, it is not enough. You need to change the child mentality, and the new generation should have to be leaders, innovators, and knowledge economy. So I'm very happy to attend this session, and hopefully we will cooperate with Wadi Makkah. I have been cooperating with STF for many decades, but I suggest for IDB to find a platform or basically an electronic network to connect all these people who spoke and others and people like me who want to connect and cooperate. Because the purpose of Taiba Knowledge Waqf is really to start from kindergarten, change education system, change social habits, thinking, and accept everybody. It's not just by the traditional way of who is right and who is wrong, but encourage young people to think outside the box.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. We always impressed about the Waqf activities. We are very creative in our member country, really creative in creating the Waqf. And this Waqf is really new idea and new things that how we can make the Waqf in a new area, to implement in a new area. And hopefully, inshallah, we can see the new wave of Islamic finances about Waqf, inshallah ta'ala. Dr. Adel.
What you're doing is really very important in a region that is very not friendly to NGOs. So why do you do it? Okay, that's a quick question. And what difficulties you are facing? Nabil, you are a religious university, Al-Qura, you are going into technology, that's a big jump. I remember when some time ago, one of my colleagues who was coming from religious also university, he said, come on, you don't need technology. In the future, there will be fighting by safe. So do you really find technology very important in what you do in a religious basically education? Dato, Malaysia. You've done great into when you released the patent system. You allowed the researchers to use their patents, to apply them, not to be tight with the institution. Is that rewarding? Is that thing working? Because I know in Egypt, we really have a problem that the institutions still are very, they're hanging. They don't want the patent to go to the inventor. They'd like to keep it for the institution, hoping that sometime it will generate money. Fatima, the Innovation Fund, the latest Innovation Fund, Mohammed bin Rashid Innovation Fund, that you're opening it for the whole world. Isn't that loss in the GDP? You're going to invest into companies that are not part of the UAE. They might just take your money, and later, once they grow, they fly away. Do you think that's good for the UAE? My dear,
Dr.
Malika, I attended a conference some time ago on innovation, and that was the World Innovation Forum. And they spoke about technology soon will be coming from the south to the north, not from the north to the south. Is it happening through the innovation labs that you are doing? And last for our people in the you in the OECD. You said that it's startups are not a good way to spread technology, not the main way. It's better to connect to international companies and let the technology move through the system. You mentioned something like this. You correct me. But the problem here is that we are really losing in our GDP. We're losing by those entities who come to the region, take the talent from the region, connect them to the international companies, and then they don't really pay off to the region economy. So can you comment on that?
Okay, I think we have 6 questions.
Another session to answer these questions.
This question, mashallah. But we don't have time. We have about 2 minutes.
Okay.
Can we make this answer in 2 minutes?
Yes.
All of us? Okay, very good. So,
okay. First, about ASTIF, how we as an NGO survive in last 18 years. The last 18 years. ASTIF is working with all entities that related to the countries. Any political issue we don't penetrate. We don't have any relation to any entities have some problems of politicals or something like that. Our mainframe is science and technology, and for this we survive, and the community accept us. Because we don't take care or didn't mention anything that maybe harm the system inside the country that we are working in. Why we are doing this? Because the board member of ASTIF is full professors, all of them. They take all the ranks inside the university, and after they finish, they feel they didn't do something really to their community. They didn't gain the fruits of their research. So they mentioned that we need to change our mentality for ourselves and for our countries. For that, we need to change the mentality that we are facing from the beginning when we start our academic life. So we work on this, and we hope that we can do this. The other thing, as we mentioned before, we work with even any age, because we need to move the barriers from the old generation for the new generation. If we connect them with the innovation ecosystem, the old generation, they will accept the youth to go further and think in critical thinking and say why and how we do this. So that we are doing. Thank you. Shukran.
Thank you.
I just a quick response. Actually, your information is outdated. Al-Qura University in Mecca started 50 years ago, and it was having 2 colleges, one in education and the other one is on Sharia and Islamic studies. But since then, for instance, the College of Engineering started 30 years ago, and 85% of the colleges are now on science and technology. So the College of Medicine, Pharmacy, Science, Applied Sciences, and also College of Computing, and that makes the difference there. So it's a comprehensive university. It's not only focusing. And the second thing is actually, Wadi Makkah is not only geared with Al-Qura University. So we have some spin-ins from researchers from different universities in Saudi Arabia and worldwide. And second thing is that we invite also entrepreneurs from the market to get engaged with Wadi Makkah, because there is a niche market on research, on transportation, crowd management, which is the mega events happening in the city of Makkah. So just to clarify, even I'm not the guy to, because I moved to another positions, but I have been at Al-Qura University for the last 15 years. So that,
I think when they visit the Valley of Mecca, they will understand.
They will verify that.
Yeah.
So your question was on whether the universities are keen to see their patents, their IPs getting commercialized. Well, a very short answer is yes, and a few reasons for that. Firstly, the research universities we have in Malaysia, there are 5 research universities. The way the government's policies in terms of how they're funded has been tweaked over the years, where they are now having to have a certain percentage of their income coming from commercialization. And commercialization is not just starting their own spin-offs, but also licensing of the IPs. So one of the things that we've done as well, our commercialization platform actually facilitates licensing of IPs from the universities, and they have a sharing model between the universities and the researchers, as well as the commercialization partner. Now, when you try to license out IPs, there's always a gap in expectations of value. The owner of the IP would tend to think that it's worth a lot of money even before it's finding its way to the market. And of course, the investor, the funder, or the commercialization partner will see it as a much lower value. And so one of the things we do is to try and bridge that expectation of value. And last year alone, we did 170 license deals of IPs from our universities with private sector.
Very good. Fatima?
So, okay, going behind the rationale of the creation of Mohammed bin Rashid Innovation Fund at the beginning was because the ministry investigated clearly the sub-indicators within the Global Innovation Index and where did we did low and which part of those indicators can be enhanced by a project that the ministry would look after. So, the operating model of the fund was created, taking into consideration such implications of numbers and statistics that will be later on feeded into or plugged into the methodology of calculation for GIA for the next rounds and cycles. So the model is there, it's tightly controlled. We're not saying that we're not giving the money or not financing innovations that are based on other countries, but we do look closely to innovations that are willing to incorporate within the country to make sure that the impact of those innovations are brought to the UAE. We're balancing, we're looking into the commercial side when we do the assessment of the eligibility of each and every application, but we look majorly 60% of the weight goes to innovation aspects. That model that I mentioned is clearly governed by the advisory and the decision committee. It's closely governed by the Emirates Development Bank, the official host and the operator of the fund, to make sure that such implications that you mentioned, which is truly important to us, are not out of control or side to the ministry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the question to me was whether we see this new breakthrough solutions coming from the Global South versus North. Short answer, yes. Most of the new business models around using mobile technology for financial inclusion, using behavioral insights to change different attitudes towards savings, corruption, environment, and so on, are coming from Global South. I would say with the work, advising work that we do to for the governments, 9 out of 10 new things that happen, we have picked up on them from the Global South as opposed to Global North. Yeah.
Very good. Alan?
Okay, concerning the startups, as I mentioned, the startups are very important and they're very positive, but it's my message was that it's not the only thing. It's maybe the visible part of the iceberg. Okay, the large part of the innovation. Mr. Rosario mentioned Steinbeis. Steinbeis, what does Steinbeis do? Steinbeis connects the university professors with existing SMEs, existing companies, and tries to create projects which will improve the processes and products of existing companies. And these things are maybe not as glamorous. They don't create, media attention so much as startups do, because startups are spectacular. You can have a young person getting rich in a very short lapse of time. But what I'm saying is that the bulk of innovation is actually going through less glamorous channels, which are a cooperation with existing SMEs. Now, you mentioned about the multinationals. Of course, you do. You can have the multinationals trying to take your knowledge away, but for this you need to have very good intellectual property legislation and good contracts and good lawyers who are going to protect your intellectual property. Okay, and basically then in the collaboration with the multinationals, I think it's very important that your academic institutions here in the regions get on the map, and somehow be seen as interlocutors also by multinationals. Why not? But my message was not give it everything to the multinationals. I'm saying there are mature companies here in the region, both SMEs and mature companies, who maybe do not need very high-tech solutions, but need solutions to some problem. And innovation is not only about technology, it's also about non-technological innovation. Look at the Oslo manual definition. It is very broad. Okay, you can have an incremental innovation. Whatever can bring value to the end customer is innovation.
Thank you very much. With this, we come to the end of the first session of this Innovation Forum Day. Now, the next session will be about the startups. They will discuss the challenges, their experience challenges, and how they overcome of these things. But before we go to the startups, and we need to announce about one thing about the FinTech global competition done by IDB. So the global competition, this is the first time IDB that realized that we need to do something about the Islamic finance. and what are the challenges from financial and technology point of view, so that now we are in the arena of Bitcoin, we have blockchain, we have so many things, and we have really challenges, so we need to see how we can overcome it and what are the solutions, and this is why we introduce the FinTech Global Competition. Video. And thank you very much. Please remember, if anyone wants to participate or you want to ask anyone to participate, is fintech.isdb.org. And with this, we conclude this session. But before we leave, just to remind you that the next session will be on startups, and anyone wants to visit the Mecca Valley, so they can register here and put, please, your name, email, and cellular phone if possible. And thank you very much, and barakallahu feekum wa akhir da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Thank you.